Hi, everyone. It's Mary Kate McGarvey from the Math Office, and welcome to the very last topic in Theme 1 for Grade 5. We're just going to do a quick overview of this topic and what you're in store for. This topic will be looking at expanding the understanding of place value to decimals, and it could be approximately 10 to 17 days. Just a quick plug, don't fret if you are going into quarter 2 a little bit with this theme. That's totally fine. We really want you to take your time. We really want your students to have an understanding of these standards and of this topic. So don't worry if you're going starting quarter 2 in theme 1. That's totally fine. So just a couple quick things. You'll notice there are 3 different standards here that this topic will be addressing. We have added, you may have noticed this already, we have added some parent newsletters in both English and Spanish. These are the newsletters taken from Ready Common Core Teacher Toolbox. So go ahead and check those out. Those are great resources, and they also include activities that families can do at home, which are kind of nice because they're away from the computer screen. This is based on Blackboard Theme 1 Unit 4. And there are some optional videos to complete and some must-do videos to complete. Just a quick note while we're talking about Ready Common Core and some interactive videos. Be careful of Ready Common Core in using its resources because Ready Common Core's book and some of its videos talk about how the decimal point is moving. And as we all know, the decimal point never moves. That decimal point stays in the same place. We're referring when we're multiplying and dividing by powers of 10, we are referring to the digits moving by place values, not the decimal. That's going to stay the same. You'll notice that this starts out with 2 grade 4 tasks, and we'll look a little bit more closely into those. Those are more optional. If your students need them, please take the time and do them. If your students don't need them, you can go ahead and skip over 15 and 16. Totally up to you. Also, a reminder that grade 5 students did receive place value discs in whole numbers and in decimals. This is a perfect time to get students using those discs and to get students working in that concrete model. Here's a quick little video how students can insert images with manipulatives. And also keep in mind that students can just tilt their screen down and you can see them as they work with their discs. I've also inserted these CRA mats, just like we had in the curriculums, to help monitor students as they work. And you'll notice a variety of concrete and representational forms of each of these numbers. Okay, so that all being said, let's kind of just jump right in here. We have, like I said, essential tasks 15 and 16 are grade 4 standards. You'll notice there's a little note in here. This was affected by e-learning. Students only received this during e-learning. They did not receive it face-to-face. If you don't need this essential task, please feel free to skip it. But they're really looking here as how fractions can be written as decimals. So they're going to use some shading. Once again, this is students can move this, they can change the size of this, and it's slightly transparent so they can still see the grid behind it. They can also type in here that fractional amount. So I just double clicked and I was able to type an input. And then they're going to make that connection between the fraction, the decimal grid, and what that looks like written as a decimal. Grade 4 goes to the hundredths place. So both of these lessons, you'll see hundredths and tenths. So do them as you need to, totally up to you. We're going to move into lesson 17, which is where we start 5 NBTA 1. So this is really recognizing that digit to the right or left, and that 10 times or 1/10 of, and thinking about that relationship between the digits. And this is the first time that students are going to be exposed to the thousandths place. So similar to the problems that they saw from the 4th grade task, they're going to be writing this as a fraction, modeling it as a decimal. They can write it as a decimal here as well. There are some digital place value discs here, so I could build this in my place value chart. So for example, I could make my 1/10, my 200ths, and this is going to help me when I write my decimal. Same thing here, double click, and I can write inside these boxes to build that fraction. They're then going to be taking that work and they're going to be comparing it to place value blocks. This is an interactive tutorial. Please note on lesson essential task, 17, to complete this video before essential task 18. You can just copy and paste that link and share with students. So continuing with the same standard here, we are looking at that relationship between place values. We're going to build. So how can I show 100 using discs of 10? So they're going to start to see that I need 10 tens, and that's going to build 100. So it's 10 times the value. Same with how can I show 10 using discs of 1? So I'm going to need 10 ones. And students are going to be able to make this generalization that the place value to the left is 10 times greater. Once again, our decimal's not moving. We can model that here with our discs. We can show that if I build 10 ones and I continue, my digit is going to move into my tens place. And then they're going to continue to that decimal place value with tens. Following that, we're going to continue with the same standard. Here we see grids, and they can use their discs to model what they're seeing on those grids of 100. Once again, we're trying to get students to make that generalization and make that connection between that relationship of place values. We also see that division here. Okay. Here you're going to notice when you share and make connections, you're going to notice that on slide 5, it says divided by 10, and on slide 6, it says times 1/10. So here's a great time to make that connection. That when I'm doing 3/10 times 1/10, I'm thinking of that as 3/10 divided by 10. So this slide is going to be really powerful to help make that connection with that 2 different ways to represent that relationship. Now we're going to go into 5 NBTA 2, which is going to be essential tasks 20 to 22. And here students are going to be exploring those patterns of zeros when we're multiplying by powers of 10. Please do not tell students to just add zeros, because we know in 5th grade that rule expires. When we're multiplying by powers of 10 and we're looking at decimals, we don't just add zeros. Our digits are moving place values. They're getting 10 times greater or 100 times greater. So once again, students are going to be building. We're looking for that relationship. So we want students to be able to make these conjectures and these generalizations on their own. We're not just giving them this information. So they're going to continue to build, and begin to understand that connection. And we'll see when you complete this, we'll see that our 5, the digit 5 is moving, right? Our decimal point is going to remain in the same place, just like the digit 5 will move and our decimal point will be in the same place. Something that you'll notice on some of these slides is that we have sample anchor charts for you. These, once again, anchor charts are something that should be created as a class, and we should be using classwork, and they should have ownership over those anchor charts. But here's a sample of what the anchor chart could look like. And as it opens, I want you to think about how I've demonstrated how that digit is moving when we are multiplying by those powers of 10. So I just highlighted where those 5s are going. This is just a sample of something that you could have. So if for this topic, if it is, you'll see in the notes, consider adding a class anchor chart. There are some samples that have been created. Once again, they are samples. I highly recommend you building this with your students. Essential task 21. We're still keeping with that same standard, thinking about that place value and that relationship between place values. There's discs. There's also, if you, sorry, that's not in there. Okay. Thinking about how students are going to show their work, they could show it with paper, pencil, with discs. You could also have them show their work. There's place value blocks here that they can drag and drop. This has also been placed in the math apps. So the problem has been copied over. Same problem that's on the slides, use the space to test the idea out, and they can build those numbers as they go. So those are kind of different options for them as they're sharing, really whatever works best, whether it's the discs or the place value blocks, math apps. Just once again, the discs are nice because they do have those concrete discs in front of them for them to be able to manipulate. Okay, our next one, Essential Task 22, is the last one for the standard. Once again, we're looking at those patterns, but now you'll notice that we see exponents introduced. So this is their first time ever seeing an exponent. That's why we're starting with, I think I see, I wonder. So allow students to kind of take that time, see if they notice any patterns, right? And really hone in on this multiplication, not necessarily the number of zeros, because the number of zeros are going to get kind of wonky. That's not going to work for us when we're thinking about multiplying powers of 10 and decimals. So 10 to the second power is the same as 10 times 10. Focus on that more so than that there are 2 zeros in 100. Similarly to 10 to the third power is the same as 10 times 10 times 10 versus 3 zeros in 1,000. So there, have them make that connection. And then there's a problem here. You might need to take an extra day or two to go over exponents. That's totally up to you. There are some pages in the Ready Common Core book that you can use to enhance that learning. All right, last but not least, we have Essential Tasks 23 and 24. Which are going, and just please note that this is only part of this standard. So 3 NBT A3A. It is not all of 5 NBT A3, just A. So they're looking at reading and writing decimals to the thousands using base 10 numerals, number names, and expanded forms. So we're really going to be looking at those different forms of that number. Once again, they can use discs to solve. Here you'll see in the teacher notes if you would rather them use place value blocks, or if you're making something on your own, this is a really great resource that's down here in the notes. This is going to be a Google slide, and it's blank. It's 2 blank slides. One slide is you're going to see decimal discs or place value discs, and one slide you're going to see place value blocks. So if you would rather them use place value blocks, all you have to do, and you have to just be careful when you select them all, you're going to want to click and drag, because I'm going to want to make sure that I get all of those blocks and all the copies, and then I can just copy and I can paste that right into here. Paste. So if I want to delete, you could either have both options. You could delete the discs and have one option, totally up to you. There's also these math apps. The problem will be up here on the screen for students to solve. All they have to do is share, either copy their image and put it in that slide, or they could share that link back with you. So that is just practicing the different forms. They're going to start by building, then they're going to look at that as a fraction, expanded form as a fraction. Then we're going to decompose those fractions, right? So thinking about 604,000, that 6 is really 6 times 1/10. That 4 is really 4 times 1,000. Okay. And in this slide before here, we can say that this is the same as 6/10 plus 4,000. This is kind of a scaffolded, I did it backwards and that I apologize for, but this is kind of like a scaffolded step. So I've identified what that would look like as a fraction. Now I'm identifying that as a whole number times the unit fraction, which is how one way that we could write it in expanded form. Writing that number in word form. So this might take a little bit of time, but now we have it and you're going to compare. Now we have it as writing that decimal in expanded form as a decimal. So they can make that connection. So I would copy the fraction, expanded form, the word form, and now I'm looking at this. So how are all these forms of this number similar? How are these forms different? There's also a great Ready Common Core interactive tutorial here. Okay, our very last essential task. Same standard, we're looking at those different forms. Just a heads up, they might have a difficult time with this number line and identifying what that number is. So that might be something that you need to help them. They haven't seen a thousandth on a number line. So just kind of something to keep in mind as you introduce this task, but they're going to do those different forms of that number. So this might be easier accomplished paper, pencil, or on their communicator with a dry erase marker. It's totally up to you. It's totally up to your students. Or you could copy and paste this slide. So just thinking about all these different ways that we can represent this number. There is some Learn Zillion skill instruction to kind of help talk through this Oliver problem if you want to use that video. There's also some problems in the student book that you can have students work on. Really whatever works for you. There's plenty of places to kind of pool extra problems and extra support. All of these lessons are made for multiple days. Excuse me, all of these lessons except for the grade 4 lesson and the very first lesson are written for multiple days. So just kind of take your time. If you see that, oh, my students need a little extra time on expanded form or the powers of 10 or whatever it may be, take your time, take a pause, pull something off of Blackboard, pull something from Ready Common Core. Just caution once again, making sure that we're not pulling information or videos that have that decimal point moving. So that it was a very quick overview of our very last topic in theme 1. Once again, if you're going into quarter 2, don't even worry about it. Now is the time to go slow. Thanks for listening, and I hope you have a great day.